You're listening to the CyberWire Network, powered by N2K.
And now a word from our sponsor, CrashPlan. The tried and true method for making sure you're covered is to always have a backup plan. CrashPlan takes data preservation seriously. They provide data resiliency by automatically backing up endpoint files to the cloud every 15 minutes, with 256-bit AES encryption in transit and at rest. CrashPlan helps you tackle data challenges like ransomware, breaches, migrations, and legal holds. The undeniable solution for the inevitable: back up better with CrashPlan. Try it for free at crashplan.com. New phishing campaigns afflict users of Microsoft 365 and Adobe. An analysis of Big Head ransomware. Multichain reports a crypto heist with over $100 million stolen. CISA makes an addition to the known exploited vulnerability catalog. Progress Software issues additional MOVEit patches. The FBI's Deputy Assistant Director for Cyber, Cynthia Kaiser, joins us with examples of the agency's technical disruption operations. Our guest is Scott Piper, Principal Cloud Security Researcher at Wiz, sharing findings of their State of the Cloud 2023 report. And Telegram's role in news about Russia's war. I'm Dave Bittner with your CyberWire Intel briefing for Monday, July 10th, 2023. Email security company MOVEit has detected a new email phishing campaign focused on Microsoft 365. The phishing email contains a malicious HTML file that runs JavaScript meant to collect the victim's email address and update a fake login page with the information collected. The script then forwards the victim to the aptly named Evil Core Online. The researchers at MOVEit determined that the unknown actors are hosting their malicious HTML domains on glitch.me, stating, "We found results for related Microsoft 365 phishing attacks online, in which requests to Evil Core Online were made for the phishing applications. Unknown phishers have leveraged the platform glitch.me to host malicious HTML pages." HackRead explains that glitch.me is a platform that enables users to create and host web applications, websites, and various online projects. Unfortunately, in this instance, the platform is being exploited to host domains involved in the ongoing Microsoft 365 phishing scam. MOVEit's research also discovered a similar attack that spoofs the login for Adobe and that uses the same domains as the Microsoft 365 phishing attack. MOVEit was able to establish a link between the spoofed web login pages and an application named Hawkeye, stating, "As reported by several cybersecurity actors like Talos, the original Hawkeye keylogger is a malware kit whose story began in 2013. Because several versions were introduced, we don't know if the authentication page is related to Hawkeye keylogger." So, the story and the threat continue to develop. Researchers at Trend Micro have released a technical report about a new ransomware family called Big Head, which emerged in May of 2023. 2 variants have been observed. Trend Micro writes, "We discovered that both strains shared a common contact email in their ransom notes, leading us to suspect that the 2 different variants originated from the same malware developer. Looking into these variants further, we uncovered a significant number of versions of this malware." The researchers detailed 3 versions of the Big Head ransomware. The first seems to be strictly ransomware. The second, however, incorporates an info stealer that Trend Micro calls Whirlwind into the package. The third variant, called Neshta, seems to be a supplementary file infector that, when employed with either the first or the second variants, can work to serve as a camouflage technique for the final big head ransomware payload. Neshta can make an infestation look like a different type of threat, a virus, for example, that can muddle priorities and divert resources from countering the actual ransomware threat. Trend Micro assesses that the actors behind this new ransomware may not be very sophisticated. They say, "We also checked their Bitcoin wallet history and found transactions made in 2022. While we're unaware of what those transactions are, the history implies that these cyber criminals are not new at this type of threats and attacks, although they might not be sophisticated actors as a whole." The report adds, "Moreover, advertising on YouTube without any evidence of successful penetrations or infections might seem premature promotional activities from a non-technical perspective. From a technical point of view, these malware developers left recognizable strings, used predictable encryption methods, or implementing weak or easily detectable evasion techniques, among other mistakes." Sophisticated or not, the misdirection toward other forms of malign activity is a bit unusual. The bad actors more commonly try to deceive by misrepresenting malware as benign. The record reports that the crypto platform Multichain has suspended its services as it investigates claims that more than $125 million in cryptocurrency was stolen. Multichain is a cross-blockchain exchange service, a bridge, that allows users to exchange cryptocurrency between various blockchains and networks. In a July 6th tweet, Multichain advised all of its users to suspend use of its services and revoke all contract approvals related to Multichain. CryptoMode reports that the theft covered several assets belonging to Multichain. They say the total haul from the theft amounted to a staggering $126 million. The record says that this isn't the first time a cross-blockchain bridge has been targeted. They say cross-chain bridges like Multichain continue to be a ripe target for hackers in 2023 after billions were stolen throughout 2022. CISA has added CVE 2021-29256 to its known exploited vulnerabilities catalog. Flaw is a use-after-free vulnerability affecting the ARM Mali GPU kernel driver. BleepingComputer notes that the vulnerability can let attackers escalate to root privileges or gain access to sensitive information on targeted Android devices by allowing improper operations on GPU memory. CISA adds that Binding Operational Directive 22-01 requires federal civilian executive branch agencies to remediate identified vulnerabilities by the due date to protect FCEB networks against active threats. Google issued a patch for this flaw last week, along with fixes for 2 other actively exploited Android vulnerabilities. More patches from other vendors may be expected tomorrow, which is, after all, Patch Tuesday. Updates are expected from both Microsoft and Adobe. Security Week reports that Progress Software, whose MOVEit transfer product vulnerability has been felt broadly across many sectors, has issued patches for 3 security flaws affecting MOVEit. The vulnerabilities could be exploited to steal information. The company says it will begin issuing service packs to simplify the patching process for its MOVEit products, stating, "These service packs will provide a predictable, simple, and transparent process for product and security fixes. We have heard from you that a regular cadence and predictable timeline will enable you to better plan your resources and make it easier to adopt new product updates and fixes. As a part of these service packs, we will also be optimizing the installation process to make the upgrade process simpler." Killnet has continued to call for people interested in hacking in Russia's interest to join them, and the Hacktivist Auxiliary says it's offering training to those willing to sign up. The Record by Recorded Future reports that the individual who claims to be the group's founder and leader, known only by their hacker name KillMilk, is interested in transforming themselves into a private cyber military corporation, one that could be hired to attack NATO targets under Russian orders. This seems unlikely to happen in the near term. Killmilk's own conduct during the Wagnerite mutiny was sufficiently ambivalent to open the door for reasonable doubt concerning their political reliability. Unlike the criminal gangs who've made financially motivated attacks against targets in unfriendly states, Clop, for example, Killnet's mix of brag and DDoS may not easily be monetized. And finally, in a note from Russia's hybrid war against Ukraine, The Verge describes how Telegram, with its small staff, tolerant moderation practices, and large user base, especially in Russia and Ukraine, has enabled an outsized contribution to the sharing of war news. The social medium has been permitted to operate relatively unmolested by Roskomnadzor, Russia's internet regulation body, at least since the last round of attempted censorship was abandoned in 2020. Instead, the social platform has been the locus of free speech, sound information, disinformation, contending narratives, and a range of conspiracy mongering. The Russian agencies seem to be leaving Telegraph largely alone because they believe they may be able to break its anonymity and track its users if they haven't already done so. If you're a Telegram user in Russia, sleep with one eye open and keep a good scorecard of Kremlin talking points. Coming up after the break, the FBI's Deputy Assistant Director for Cyber, Cynthia Kaiser, joins us with examples of the agency's technical disruption operations. Our guest is Scott Piper from Wiz, sharing findings from their State of the Cloud 2023 report. Stay with us. Hey everybody, Dave here. Are your sales and marketing teams tasked with ever-growing brand awareness and lead gen goals? The CyberWire is a great way to put your message into the ear of decision-makers across cyber and help fill your funnel. We have great sponsorship opportunities available, but we're filling up fast. Contact our team now to learn more about how sponsorship of the CyberWire can help build your business at thecyberwire.com/sponsor. And now, a word from our sponsor, Syntiot. As an 8A Hub Zone minority and woman-owned small business company, Syntiot specializes not only in software engineering, but in artificial intelligence and cybersecurity as well. Syntiot's customers, and they retain those customers, include the U.S. Department of Defense, the intelligence community, and the Departments of State and Justice. Their mission is to protect the systems that protect the people who protect us. If you're looking for a partner in accomplishing your mission, check out Syntiot.com. That's Cinteot.com. Your partners in everything data and cybersecurity. Scott Piper is Principal Cloud Security Researcher at cloud security provider Wiz. They recently published their 2023 State of the Cloud report, and I checked in with Scott Piper for the details.
There's always been kind of an assumption that AWS is, kind of the main cloud provider used by a number of companies, and that really is playing out in the data set that we see. No matter how we tried to slice and dice that data, we did see that the AWS is the major cloud provider there, and by a pretty large gap as well.
What about companies sort of spreading their information among multiple cloud providers? What are you tracking there?
So I think there's this kind of myth that multi-cloud, this concept of multi-cloud is a common thing, where that concept is that you have this single architecture that spans across multiple cloud providers, and you're able to easily move between them, whether that's for disaster recovery purposes perhaps, or just just the ability to move between them, maybe to take advantage of various costs, better features of different clouds, and we really see that that's not the case. companies tend to be focused very heavily on a single cloud provider. And there's, a number of reasons for why that probably is. We didn't, really try to identify in our data, why that is. However, there's an assumption that it's probably due to things like data gravity, that it's just difficult to try and move your data between the different cloud providers. People tend to focus on the different clouds, and the reason for that being is that they're very complex, and that's some data points that we included in the report, was just showing the constant growth of the complexity of the cloud providers, and that's growing in every way that you can imagine. So whether it's looking at the revenue growth, so we looked at the SEC filings of the different cloud providers in order to see the growth of their cloud businesses. But also things like the API growth. So we were able to look at the SDKs of AWS and look at basically the API counts from, I think it was all the way back to 2016. And you can see there's just this constant steady growth of the number of APIs they have. And what that means is that as the APIs are growing, the complexity of that cloud is growing. So not only does it have more actions, more APIs that you can take advantage of, what that means though is that there's more services, there's more features. Each of those APIs themselves has a growing number of parameters associated with it. And so this complexity is just increasing. And I think as a result of that, that's one of the reasons why companies really tend to focus on a single cloud, is just that it's too hard to try and keep up with, all the different cloud providers, all the different features they have, and, how you could potentially misconfigure them, whether that's, security reasons or, other types of misconfigurations you can make as well. All these different reasons, I think, really, are encouraging companies or motivating them to, stay on a single cloud for most of their workloads. They really, I believe, my personal assumption is the reason that they're spanning some of these clouds when they do have multiple cloud providers tends to be things like acquisitions or just, other events that are causing, some of the different cloud providers to be used. But it's not really, in my opinion, not like a focused goal for them to attempt to use the other clouds.
Well, when you look at the information you've gathered here, what are the risks that organizations face, based on the types of cloud usage that you're tracking?
Interesting things about this report is we tried to not have the report exist as kind of a sales pitch for Wiz. And so looking at the report, it's generally accessible to anybody that is interested in the state of the cloud in general, not even cloud security. And so I think that was kind of a different approach that we had with this report. Is, a lot of times when people put together white papers like this, it's very much a sales pitch for their company in some way. And so we tried to avoid that a little bit, but we did discuss some things. So we did, for example, some research where we created some public S3 buckets in a couple of different ways. And we were interested in how quickly are those going to be found by attackers. And so we've seen some examples where it's fairly well known amongst cloud security professionals that if you put an AWS access key on GitHub, that access key is going to be found very quickly by attackers, and they're going to they have automated tools that are going to try to use those access keys to spin up cryptocurrency mining. Is one of the common things that they do. But we were curious, what if we create a public S3 bucket with a completely random name, nobody can guess this name, and we reference it in a public GitHub repo. So we just, basically provide a commit, merge that PR into a public GitHub repo, and it just references a public S3 bucket. Will attackers find that through automated scripts or other means, and try to list the contents of that S3 bucket? And so we did find that, yes, they do that. And I can't remember the exact number. It was less than 24 hours, though, in which they were able to do it. I think it was maybe 7 hours for this. And then another experiment we did was we've seen that there are tools that exist publicly that allow attackers to try and brute force guess the names of S3 buckets. So what you do is you basically provide these tools with the name of a company, and then they're going to go through a word list in the same way you might perform password cracking in order to guess names of S3 buckets that company may have. So you can imagine, if it was somebody trying to look for S3 buckets of Wiz, they might try S3 buckets that are named Wiz backups, Wiz logs, various names like that. And with, various types of hyphens and, periods, and other types of, separation characters in between those words. And so we're curious, well, what if we create some of these S3 buckets with some common, names of companies, popular company names out there, and create these S3 buckets and turn on monitoring of them and see how long it takes attackers to find those. And so we found, I think for that one, again, the number was less than 24 hours, and I think it was 13 hours for that one.
That's Scott Piper from Wiz. And I'm pleased to be joined once again by Cynthia Kaiser. She is Deputy Assistant Director for Cyber at the FBI. Cynthia, welcome back to the show. You and I have spoken about how traditionally in the past, the FBI helped victims and often functioned in a reactive kind of way. But these days, you have a broader set of tools available to you when it comes to cyber, to the point of actually being able to go out and do some technical disruption. Can you share with us what sort of things can you do?
Absolutely. I mean, the FBI really has three jobs for the American citizens and American businesses, which is to try to take down adversaries and counter their operations before they ever get a chance to target the U.S., to share information and provide any assistance we can to stop targeting once it's occurred, and then to provide justice to if you unfortunately become a victim, to those victims, as well as provide peace of mind and remediation assistance as necessary. So within all of that, I think technical operations fall within almost all of those, but really in that kind of try to prevent space. So the FBI disrupted over 300 malicious cyber campaigns last year. Now, that includes a lot of different actions, but many of which are highly technical. And I think a great example of this, and a recent example of this, is our Operation Medusa. Now, Operation Medusa was conducted in May of this year, where we led a multi-agency joint cyber operation to globally disrupt Snake, the most sophisticated cyber espionage tool designed by the Russian Federal Security Service. Most people know them as FSB. And they use that for long-term intelligence collection on sensitive targets. So FSB used it to conduct operations against high-priority targets like government networks, research facilities, journalists, and their targeting wasn't random. Infection points may have been chosen because of their low security, innocuous reputation, or high traffic volume specifically due to the information they held, like foreign policy communications. We'd identified Snake infrastructure across 50 countries in North and South America, Europe, Africa, Asia, and Australia, including the US and Russia itself. So kind of going into the operation, the FBI, through its technical capabilities, led an effort to mitigate the malware by disrupting its critical functions. So we were able to render it inoperable, both in the US and then with our partners abroad. I think a great outcome and good read for your readers, and I think you've talked about it on the show before, is the Cybersecurity Advisory that we put out, which is just a phenomenal piece, cyber threat intelligence. It's called Hunting Russian Intelligence Snake Malware. And it detailed not only technical mitigations or just the technical details behind the operation, but I think had some of the strongest attribution language in there as well. And it really demonstrated the lengths that we had gone technically to collect, to understand the adversary, and then to be able to counter it.
And there are diplomatic elements to this as well. I mean, this really puts the message out to our adversaries in a way that is direct and straightforward.
Absolutely. It puts the message out to our adversaries that we are going to ensure that we have our information correct, that we're going to be dogged in our pursuit of ensuring we understand the truth, and that we're going to share that with American businesses and the American public to make it known. But I like that what you said about a diplomatic element there, because I think what's not often thought about when we put out things publicly is the diplomatic element in this space it provides our allies. To have a full technical details rundown of exactly what another country has done, not just to the U.S., but to their own citizens, to people in our allies' countries. It gives them the ability to join us and speak with us and talk about cyber norms and the international stage in a way in which you can't do necessarily just with sharing classified information cross borders. So that these operations and publications provide such a key element in, I think, the global understanding and global cyber norming that needs to occur in this still relatively new space.
An operation like Medusa, where you're able to take down Snake, how much of a setback is that for an organization like the FSB?
It's a huge setback. Taking down the tools or taking offline different backdoors, maybe like we did in March, the March campaign. So we did that a few months later in 2021, where China had put backdoors onto thousands of U.S. networks. And we were able to, either through mitigation advice and publications, but then through a technical operation as well, shut those back doors, not enable a massive campaign to continue. That's a huge blow to these organizations because they're spending millions of dollars and putting thousands and thousands of hours against conducting operations like this, and we render them ineffective when we're able to conduct these operations. And we buy time so that they have to reconstitute. They have to try again, do all of that work again. And that's time in which they're not targeting Americans.
For you and your colleagues, there must be a certain sense of gratification as well, personally and professionally.
Absolutely. I work with some of the best people. And I like to tell people a lot of times, I think I have the best job in Washington because every day I get to come in to work and know that I'm keeping my friends, family, and community safe. And that's what drives so many of the men and women across the FBI, and especially at FBI Cyber, is they're not here for the money, trust me. They're here because they really want to make a difference, and they get to see that difference every day. And that's just exciting. It's exciting to know that you're playing that part in national security.
Cynthia Kaiser is Deputy Assistant Director for Cyber at the FBI. Cynthia, thank you so much for sharing your expertise.
Thank you so much for having me.
And now, a word from our sponsor, SpyCloud, the cybercrime analytics leader. SpyCloud disrupts cybercrime by telling you what criminals know about your business and your customers, so you can take action to prevent ransomware, session hijacking, account takeover, and online fraud. SpyCloud constantly recaptures and analyzes new data from the criminal underground, including credentials, session cookies, and PII siphoned from malware-infected devices. With knowledge of the specific exposed data criminals have in hand from InfoStealer malware on managed and unmanaged devices, security teams can respond with a more efficient and effective process called post-infection remediation that fits seamlessly into existing incident response frameworks. Get SpyCloud's post-infection remediation guide outlining the 7 steps for preventing a malware infection from becoming a full-blown ransomware incident. Visit spycloud.com/cyberwire. That's spycloud.com/cyberwire. And we thank SpyCloud for sponsoring our show. And that's the CyberWire. For links to all of today's stories, check out our daily briefing at thecyberwire.com. Don't forget to check out the Grumpy Old Geeks podcast, where I contribute a regular segment on Jason and Brian's show. We have a lively discussion every week. You can find Grumpy Old Geeks where all the fine podcasts are listed. We'd love to know what you think of this podcast. You can email us at cyberwire@n2k.com. Your feedback helps us ensure we're delivering the information and insights that help keep you a step ahead in the rapidly changing world of cybersecurity. We're privileged that N2K and podcasts like the CyberWire are part of the daily intelligence routine of many of the most influential leaders and operators in the public and private sector, as well as the critical security teams supporting the Fortune 500 and many of the world's preeminent intelligence and law enforcement agencies. N2K Strategic Workforce Intelligence optimizes the value of your biggest investment, your people. We make you smarter about your team while making your team smarter. Learn more at n2k.com. This episode was produced by Liz Irvin and senior producer Jennifer Eiben. Our mixer is Trey Hester, with original music by Elliot Peltzman. The show was written by our editorial staff. Our executive editor is Peter Kilpie, and I'm Dave Bittner. Thanks for listening. We'll see you back here tomorrow. Tired of cybersecurity mega conferences? MWise is different. With a focused agenda and targeted problem solving, MWise is where security's best go to get better. From September 18th through the 20th in Washington, D.C., you'll join a special community of security's sharpest minds, hear perspectives you might not get anywhere else, and reach a new level of mastery that'll prepare you for what's next. Register early and save at mwise.mandiant.com/conf23. That's mwise.mandiant.com/conf23.